Well, welcome to another edition of GW Unspoken, where we discuss stuff we don't typically talk about but probably should. And we're on the road right now, so you can probably hear the bit of a road noise. And I'm here with my beautiful wife. How are you, wifey?
I'm good, thank you, husband. How are you?
Very good. We've got two crazy dogs in the back, and one's just coming through the middle. So if you hear, they are tied up by the way there. If you hear some noises or grunts and groans, it's actually the puppies coming through here. Icy's with us right now, just coming through. Rachie, out of 5, how are you feeling right now?
3.
So that's low. Missing your chocolate.
Yes, no, I have a sore tailbone.
Sore tailbone. Sitting down the car won't help, obviously.
No.
All right, well, let's make it positive. What's something you're grateful for at the moment?
Lovely weekend away with my husband.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Where'd we go? What happened?
I booked us a tiny home at Yamba. Made the fatal mistake of bringing the poochies with us. It was dog friendly, but in the middle of the night my husband still had to rescue cushions and plants chewed up and the fly screen being destroyed by the 2 cattle dogs who wanted to come inside.
Oh gosh, it's like that movie Marley and Me.
Yeah.
We can't keep the dogs home alone because the neighbour gets cranky, they bark at night time. We've gone for 2 nights, so we thought in the big backyard they'd occupy themselves, but they they did. Just got into a few things, trying to scratch at the windscreen or the fly screen door, trying to get in.
How many times did you get up to?
I think it was 3, but it's quite ironic. We're talking about the value of sleep right now in the middle of an 8-series podcast about how sleep's so important. Can you tell me how you're feeling now compared to yesterday, even yourself?
Oh yeah, I mean we had a great sleep last night, but the night before probably you were awake more than you slept, I think.
Yeah, we had a laugh. We drove after school down there and took about 4 and a bit hours to get down to Yamba, and I think I got less than that sleep. But definitely feel a lot better today after sleep.
Yeah.
So, coming back home now, what are you looking forward to the next chapter, or what's on the horizon for yourself?
Something else, sorry, I just want to say I'm grateful for. I'd like to not follow instructions, of course, so I was grateful for you reading to me this morning. That was a really nice moment.
Yeah, so we've done it a bit, haven't we? We were reading that book, Greenlight.
Yeah, by Matthew McConaughey, yeah. And
I was actually thinking that when I was reading to Rach, we had terms about reading that book. It was actually something I'm really grateful to. And I don't know, many couples probably think it's weird, people reading to each other, but I really enjoy that space.
I think we were talking about the benefit of actually reading a book. Like everyone's using podcasts or Audible at the moment, but I think there's still a real gentle magic to just reading a book and getting lost in that. For some reason it feels so much more relaxing.
Yeah, well, I remember reading some last night. I was getting to like an interesting part and I heard someone snoring on my shoulder, so I must have been reading with much enthusiasm there. But it's funny because we were both in it this morning and we were having a coffee, and then you said, should we read a bit more of that book this morning? And I was actually thinking that, but thought you might want to do something a bit more, I don't know, upbeat, exciting, and go out for a breakfast or take the dogs for a walk on the beach or something, but we're both thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I think we were at the final chapters of the book, so it was nice to just have a lazy Sunday in bed without dogs or children and just take that moment. It was nice. Yeah,
well, the dogs are tied up on a short leash, so they were well behaved. They couldn't get up to much initiative that way, so it was good. Well, let's go with that tangent at the moment, since we've gone that field. What's something that stood out to you in the book about Matthew McConaughey, and maybe how that may have some kind of influence or thought process on you and your life at the moment?
Well, I think because my husband's nearing the big 5-0 this year, it's become like a real thing with us around the Brene Brown Halfway to Dead segment that she did, that we talk a lot about what have you left on the table and what's left behind that you haven't achieved, that you wish you had. To recap some of those lines, Brene Brown says, at about 50 years of age, the universe comes down, taps you on your shoulder and says, hey, you're halfway to dead and I'm not messing around anymore. And you've wasted the gifts that I've given you, and it's not without penalty. Nobody rides for free. And we talk about that every time we've played that or listened to it. We've both had an enormous, I guess, wake-up moment that, what is it that we feel like we should have achieved? What is it that we want to make sure we've left? And then we were having a discussion around what's our legacy and what legacy meant to us. So I think after reading Matthew McConaughey's book, I just felt he was incredibly brave. You know, you can make a lot of assumptions about someone, but when you read his biography, or autobiography, I should say, he's written it for himself. He talks a lot about when things didn't feel right, then he would be brave enough to take himself away and take these trips where he'd force himself to have to deal with his inner demons, I guess. And I think, you know, we probably have all had moments where we've done that, but I just really respected that he would take that, my brother calls it the dark night of the soul. He'd go through and he would not rest and not move to the next phase of his life until he felt like he'd gotten deep within inside himself and understood what was eating him up, and then he would proceed with the next chapter of his life. So I really respected that.
Yeah, and he's really a deep thinker, isn't he? Like, he articulates things very well. I didn't realise he was such a deep thinker, but even we talked about how, you know, Sylvester Stallone, Denzel Washington, I'm sure there's more actors out there who've done it, but he took nearly 2 years off, denying parts that he'd used, like his romantic rom-com, obviously, and he was known for that, but he didn't want to take another movie like that because he wanted to test himself and be something different and be known for something different, and I just really respected it. You know, there's often, I think one part was $14 million for another rom-com, but he didn't do it because it didn't sit well with who he was. So what's it mean for you then? We talk about Matthew McConaughey being, you know, those self-demons and going away and thinking about himself, his life, both pushing to 5-0 now. Not just
I'm not even close, buddy.
My life. But is there something in there that sparks your inner thoughts about where you want to be or where you're heading now?
Yeah, I think we spoke the other day that I've always spent my career doing things for Indigenous youth, and as I've gotten a bit older, I'm more conscious of being really, really present for my own children, like the 5 of them. I think I'm really conscious of making sure that the legacy I leave is that I've been that great parent and guide to them. I don't know, I think you get caught up in the rush of life and all the things you're expected to have and achieve, but I think I reflect deeper on that more because I worked so much when my kids were little that I am really aware now of those precious moments, and it's capturing the chat in the car on the way to school, it's tucking them in at night and having those conversations, and just by making a concerted effort to be super present for them, that's when I find particularly the teenage girls will then open up the most. It's at the least expected moment. So yeah, where I'm at in my life is taking the break off the career as much and probably feeling like the most important legacy I'll leave behind is to raise, you know, 5 children that have, you know, and obviously there's been a couple other children along the way, some stepchildren, but for now, my current situation, making sure that those 5 young people feel like there's going to be someone who shows up for them for the rest of their life, and what I've instilled in them has been beneficial, that the world will benefit from the human beings they have grown into becoming.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for a parent too. Like, you get to that stage where, you know, a lot of people might feel like saying, well, I don't have time to step back and be that person or that parent for my kids. But like you said before, it's those small, little, seemingly insignificant moments where you're tucking them in and saying it, or the 10 or 15 minute drive to school where you get to have that conversation, you know, off your devices, let's have a chat. Let's have song for song even. And I think someone said it really well the other day, that a lot of times we have those really good conversations with people when we're actually not face to face and we're looking at traffic and we're distracted. And you can actually really get deep and talk about those things that maybe some teenagers are trying to, you know, hold back. I'm sure we all have our secrets when we're teenagers, but just to know that they're there for us, or we're there for them, I should say.
Well, not to name names, but there's one particular teenage girl who, since she was little, would just say, I do myself. And so often I feel incredibly frustrated because I don't think she listens to me or doesn't take any advice and chooses to shape the world around the way she wants things to operate. But then when I'm least expecting it, words will come out of her mouth that are generous or giving or kind or sensitive or just super sharp with her problem solving. And I realise that it is still going in. So just when I think she's not listening or she doesn't ever want our advice, when I see her in a position of guiding other young children or having to be responsible, she really steps up to the plate, and I find that, you know, I go, okay, it's okay. She's actually absorbing it. Yeah.
So you use that word a bit, guiding. So what's the difference between what do you mean by that? Like, what's the parenting situation with the word guiding? So there's parents that are listening who are probably going, well, that's okay. My kids don't listen. I know they don't listen, and I try and tell them to this and tell them that, and I know they don't listen. I'm trying to be the right parent for them. What's the difference between, I suppose, telling and guiding?
Probably, and who knows for what particular sum of reasons, but being controlled or being told what to do is probably like one of my least favourite things in the world.
No.
And I think because of that, but also because I made so many mistakes growing up, so many things I wasn't proud of, so many challenges or wrong paths I took, I have always made it a commitment to never have secrets from my children. And not every parent would agree with that, but I never wanted them to feel they had to live up to me without knowing who I was and how flawed I've been myself. So I guess I've always tried to create an environment where they've felt safe to tell me anything, no matter what it was. And I won't always be happy about it or agree with it, but they definitely know that I will listen without judgment, and be there and love them regardless. Like, we'll figure it out, and it doesn't mean I won't be angry at the time or disappointed or frustrated, but they also know it's safe to make mistakes because I've shared mine with them. So, yeah, I think that creates an environment. The guiding bit is that a really good example is quite often when you're a teenager, you don't want to listen to that advice. So I try and flip it and say, well, if it's not about you, but it was happening to your child or your younger sibling, would you allow it to happen? Would you like that to happen? If it was your child, would you allow them to do that? And because you put the power back in them to make the decision, I find that more often than not, they get it. Like, they just stop the argument because you've made them feel what it would feel like if they were the parent or if they were the older sibling responsible for that decision. Yeah.
And would you say that your parenting has been shaped or was different compared to when you were growing up? Because I know that you've been before on the podcast, and it's a very popular podcast. It was actually quite interesting because we were going to talk about parenting last time you were on. It was probably over a year ago now, and it started talking about the way you grew up and being Indigenous. But you told the audience back then that you lost both your parents by the time you were 8. So you didn't have, although you had mother and fatherly figures, you didn't actually have your mum and dad for very long in your life. So does that shape you as a mother now and what you want to give to your kids that maybe you did not have?
Yeah, I was talking to one of our girls the other day. I was talking to Imi, and she was asking me some serious sort of life questions, and I guess she's gotten to an age where she's aware that I lost my mum and dad young, and she was asking me the other day, how did I deal with that? You know, she said, Rach, how could you possibly go on? But the point of it is that the shaping in me was that you, didn't have a choice, you had resilience, and we've spoken about that before, but I've also come to realise that I overcompensate with my children because I never want them to feel like I had all of those feelings like abandonment, loneliness. I felt like, and it's not a criticism, but nobody showed up for anything I ever went to, like not a sports game, not a presentation, not a certificate, I don't know, whatever the things are that parents show up for their children at school, there just wasn't that ability in our family. I mean, they were just doing such a great job at trying to keep, you know, food on the table for all of us, that was an additional thing that just wasn't possible. So I can see now at Christmases or birthdays or Easter, I go really, really out there, because I can remember a Christmas where when Mum was sick, we just didn't, Christmas just didn't happen. Or the Easter, we went looking for the eggs and Mum was going through chemo. So I think, you know, she forgot to hide any, and so there were no Easter eggs. So I think that sort of makes me overdo things, but not to the point where I shortcut the lessons. Like, I think it's really important to still allow children to process pain, loneliness, difficulty, resilience. I'm not that parent. I'm not the parent that gives them everything on the day-to-day basis. I'm not the parent who over mollycoddles. I'll have my moments through the day where they know they get really strong attention and focus, maybe tucking them in at night or on that drive to school. But I think we try and too often shortcut the lessons for our kids, the pain of learning about life. And I think suffering in life helps us endure and helps us have empathy. I'm still big on creating independence, chores, working for what you want in life. I definitely
no hand-me-downs, no freebies.
No, and I'm not the parent to go over the top at school if the kids get in trouble. I mean, I believe teachers are doing their best. So, yeah, I'm still very protective, and you wouldn't want to be on the side of someone who crossed that line. But for the majority, I still let my young children navigate life, because I think that's a critical skill they have to learn.
And you see, like, some people of similar age to you and children you see, or teenagers you see, say, even incidentally on buses, trains, out in the community. Do you think parents have got it wrong there, where they do try and provide too much or give in too much? Because we know naturally that teens always, they start pushing back. That's how their neural pathways are built. Otherwise, they'll never leave the nest, you know. So do you think it's a lack of education from parents about that, and parents are giving up or giving in?
Yeah, well, I don't even know about this word woke, but I think political otherwise, I think we've completely lost our minds with that. I think, and we've been reading a really good, or you have been, I put you onto it, we've been talking about this parenting book, where parents have forgotten it's okay to set the boundaries, and that young people still desperately need that. I think we all got a bit scarred from childhoods of beatings or whatever, that we just suddenly decided that we were going to not let our kids feel any pain or any suffering, or they could do what they like or eat what they like, because everyone was scarred from the Brussels sprouts, I suppose. I don't know. But
was it that, or was it because we didn't want the conflict? Like, I'm finding more and more parents don't want the conflict. It's easy for them because we're all busy. Is that a...
Well, I think that you mistake good boundary setting as conflict. I mean, they're two different things. I mean, nobody likes to have a run-in, but in every experience, I mean, even my 22-year-old now, he still rings me to set the line because he wants the guidance. And I think parents are afraid to do that for fear of repercussion. I think we're outsourcing it to schools. I think we're outsourcing it to technology. I think we are busier than we've ever been, striving for, materialism as a measure of success. But, I think it's really, really important. Like, I think the children still want to know what the rules are, and they like that we say no to things. They like the safety of knowing what is okay and what is not okay, because and the reason that I'm so confident about that statement is that I grew up in an environment where there wasn't time for someone to monitor me. There were no rules. I mean, there were, but there wasn't somebody able to check in on those things. So while my aunt and uncle were busy working, I just was roaming free, right? And I remember distinctly having this conversation with my best friend, Tara, at the time, and she said, you're so lucky, there's nobody nagging you what to do, because her parents were really present and they were fantastic at always knowing what we were up to, I guess. And I said, what you're missing, Tara, is that nobody cares where I am at night. And that's awful, because, and again, I'm very respectful of Madge and Frank, who raised me. It's not their fault, but there just wasn't the vigilance. And now I look back and think that's when I got into the most trouble, because I had peers guiding me instead of parents guiding me. And I think the busyness of our lives has stopped us from prioritising our children. And all the research we've read, all the books we've read, everything comes back to us needing to be more present. And sorry to ramble, but I want to make a point of, we've tried 2 holidays recently with the 4 teenage girls, and one of them was on a remote riverbank down near Miquelot Island, down on New South Wales coastline near Yamba and Iluka, and there was nothing but us camping. The dogs were there, there was a fireplace, we could put the boat in and take the girls fishing, or they could fish out on the water themselves, just walking out.
There was a camp kitchen, that was it?
Well, was it? Yeah, there was a basic camp kitchen. And we have so many beautiful memories of that trip, where there was colouring and singing and drawing and boating and swimming and the dogs and sitting by the fireplace.
Catching our own yabbies, catching our own fish.
Yeah. And then the next time I thought, oh no, we'll spoil them this time. We'll take them to a park that's a bit more teenage fun. So we went to Woolai and we stayed in one of those places that had the jumping pillow trampoline thing.
Ninja Warrior course.
It had
4
water
pools.
slides.
Yeah.
It had everything in a caravan park that you think would be heaven for teenage girls.
In the middle of summer.
In the middle
December.
of summer.
Yeah.
And it was the opposite. They were bored. They started looking for the attention of boys. Every day it was, can we buy stuff from the shop? They just were not content. And we both said we would never do a holiday like that again. Because
Well, they wanted to come home early. I couldn't understand it. It was summertime and they had the whole places to themselves, really, with water slides everywhere. And they wanted to come home.
Yeah, so maybe it's because teenage minds are already so busy that they couldn't relax. But we found that the most restful, relaxing, fulfilling holiday with the girls was when we were out at Chinchilla on the riverbank, or out at Miquelot Island, same situation.
Back
so
to nature.
it just impresses upon me the importance of being completely disconnected from technology, from other people. I think as families, if you can take those trips away where there's nothing else but the good company of each other, I reckon they've been the ones where we've had the best time.
Well, I think too, when you relax, they say that your brain becomes more creative too. So the kids naturally become more creative. You know, not looking for the next thing to keep their dopamine up and their excitement up. They actually have to create it, because they know after 10 minutes there's nothing else to do. Then they'll, help make a fire, or they'll go try and catch a fish, or they'll set a crayfish trap. They'll get their colouring in books out, and again, that's mindful and relaxing their brains. So I think all those things are so important that a lot of these kids these days don't get that. Because they have to be on and stimulated all the time, or parents think they need to be babysat with devices. It's nothing but speeding up their brains, and it's actually having more effect than others.
Well, we had our nephew Jesse over, and how old's Jess? 25? And he was sitting at our kitchen bench the other night over for dinner, and he was saying, he was still talking to Gary about planning a big trip where all the Woodford family went back to Chinchilla, which is where it all first began, right? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Oh, Chinchilla is a place where, they talk about rites of passage for a male that we're probably missing these days. I used to go out there all the time. Mum and Dad would drop us off there because Mum and Dad grew up there. And we only knew it because our Nana and Pa lived there, Mum's parents, Mum's side. And we used to go there, and they used to drop us off for school holidays, and we'd camp and fish and shoot kangaroos and stuff. So it was all part of, the place of camping out under the stars or on a tent, like the old style canvas tent. Billy tea. You know, just that sort of stuff which we absolutely love. So that sort of tradition kept going. So my dad used to take me once a year with one of his mates, a bit of a boys' trip. And since then, I've brought our family out there just to have a feel and taste of that, and the girls just love it. You love it being back in the country as well.
Yeah, just having campfire food, having the firelight, having the company of each other. Nobody cared that it was hot and dry. The girls found things to do. We read, we relaxed.
I've got one of the best pictures there, so I got cut in there, but, of the kids. I remember talking about this to the girls the other day, where we had the 4 girls out there, and Mum and yourself and me, and we're out there, and you had to go back for work, I think, and Mum said, well, I'm coming home too. And I thought your 2 girls would come straight home as well, and they're like, no, we can stay out longer. And Winnie's just gone, yeah, Dad, we can make this work. They can go home in one Prado and take this, and this, and we'll share these couple of swags. And we've got to remember, it was -1. I think one of them was -3 degrees out there, so it was middle of winter, June, July holidays. And the girls want to stay there. And so it was myself and 4 girls for 2 extra nights. I think we stayed a total of 5 nights with the 2 crazy catalogues as well. And they want to come home. And then I got a picture of them with their little headlamps on around the campfire, doing, colouring in or drawing up a business about, merchandise and all this kind of stuff. It was so cool. I just loved it. So relaxing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're similar like that. We both grew up with that country environment, and even today, my 13 cousins on my mum's side, and now all their children, my son and our daughters and all the cousins, they're still what they call CuzCon, which is where all the cousins get together and do a trip where they just go and book out a place for everyone. Like we would have these old community hall dances, and we'd have a talent quest, and we'd swim in the river, and everyone sit by the campfire, and we'd get out the guitars. And I think that's something that, like I was saying about Jessie the other night, was that Jessie was still trying to recreate that childhood experience, even
at 25.
Yeah, and that we had this discussion about it's always the moments, it's always the experiences that we remember, not the gifts or the materialism, whether we had, 2 cars and a swimming pool. It was never about that. It was about the company and connection and community around us. So I think that's something I'm desperately trying to hang on to as we age, to create a family environment where, like next weekend, we've got my 2 nephews flying over from Perth with their partners, and my son's flying up from Canberra, and my cousins will come up from the Gold Coast. And I don't know how many families are still doing that, but any opportunity, and my niece will come in hopefully from South Bank with her little boy. I don't know how many families are still, as soon as they know there's a family get together on, then everyone shows up. Good food, good company.
Funny conversations.
Laughter.
That's good too, because they're all different age groups, right?
Yeah.
So we get a feel of everything.
For that mentoring, of even the older cousins with the little ones. And George, how old's Georgie? Georgie's 2.
Turn 2, yeah.
So we all get to smooch our little, the newest little addition, I guess, in the family, which will be nice. Another parenting comment while we're talking parenting that I wanted to add is that we've been very guilty of it recently, just because you and I both help each other with the housework all the time. We forget that we have 4 teenage girls, and I said to you the other day, it is driving me insane that we have not structured chores as
list.
well as we used to. It's like we've lost the will to live with it, but
Well, 4 kids, we should have a house that shines.
But I guess that's the point for the podcast, is that when you think about the legacy stuff and what you want to leave, I've always been raised, we were just raised that, my brother and I laugh about this, you can't be useless. And so when you think about the children you're raising and they get old enough to go out into the world and build their own families, you've got to ask yourself, does it really serve them for you to continue to do every single thing for them? The washing, the cooking, the cleaning, the making of the beds, the vacuuming, the toilets,
the dishwasher in,
everything.
the dishwasher out.
Just taking
making
out
their
the
lunches.
rubbish, like you and I laugh about this as teenagers. Well, we were doing a lot, right? Washing, cooking, chores,
7. I think I counted
firewood.
7 jobs a night I had to do.
Yeah.
By the time you could feed the chooks and feed the dog, and back then you could burn the rubbish and wash up and wipe up and put the cutlery out and plates. There's always something, and you're just expected to do it.
But the point is, like, that's why at 22 Declan's so capable, because he was raised with
Hang
all
on,
those
he can't
chores.
fry an egg. That's not true.
He can fry.
He tried cooking for us once. He burnt eggs. So I don't agree with the cooking side of things.
I think he was 15 then.
I don't know.
It's a bit better
I've yet
now.
to see the cooking side of things. The other things, yes.
But the point is, the legacy. If you do everything for your young person, how will they do for themselves?
Yeah, but also there's a purpose behind that. When the kids have the old groan about, the big sigh and the end of the world because I have to take my folding up or do some folding of the clothes, for example, or unpack the dishwasher, whatever it might be, you know that once they do that, they actually feel good they've done something. It's like making the bed in the morning. That's a big thing around that. Think about making the bed the first thing you've accomplished for the day, and they hated that routine at the start. And even now when we see, hey, bed's not done, it's chipping them pretty harsh to say that's not good enough. That's actually not part of what we stand for, because once you start doing that for yourself, you can do it for others. But you're also going to teach other people to do that when you get older. And I think that's one of the biggest things, that once they have that purpose and feel pride in what they do and pride of being clean or pride of making the whole house look tidy, it sort of becomes inbuilt within them. And you're doing a great job at the moment, I think, too, with the girls. They're really interested because you love cooking. And I don't like you having to clean up, but I do clean up because it's a beautiful meal. They do love the cooking they do because you teach them how to do those things. And always asking, Rach, how do I make this? Rach, how do I make that? You can see so much instant learning happening there.
Yes, well, even the painting, like sitting down doing art together. And like Imi's recently come and asked me about goal setting or, how to set positive manifestation or wanting to do art, or text me the other day about an assignment. So I think that building that rapport, that closeness, that developing of skills together is something also that creates a bond. And I say, as much as they don't want to do the chores, I've been reframing that to say, well, I know you don't want to do those chores, but that really, really helps me. And, I'd really appreciate it because I'm tired today, or I'm struggling with that, or I'm feeling like I'm the only person. When you add that humility, I think they kind of, it's like when you're sick, they know, they then want to pick up the slack and help you. So, yeah, I think chores are important.
Yeah, well, I think too, just they become more self-sufficient when they start moving out too. You can see that straight away.
Yeah, well, I think we've spoken about it before, but Declan didn't get taught, clearly being with me for a lot of his upbringing, how to do what he deemed as man skills, which I couldn't do, and he's really struggled with that. Like he still wants to know how to fix things. He wants to be able to fix his car. He wants to be able to build things with his hands. He wants to be able to, know how to mow the lawn. And I know that's traditional male jobs. We're saying, well, we're a society of equality, but for him, he's still wanting to master those things, so he feels like he can take care of his family when he has them.
Yeah, but that's the thing we talk about too, is masculinity and that rites of passage. I think, and it's really hard. They're saying, especially with boys growing up in a single parent family, when that parent is a female, the mum, because mum becomes from the nurturer and the lover and the caregiver and the one you come to the sympathies and support to suddenly the disciplinarian. And especially as a teenager, when those boys particularly start, frontal lobe switched off and a lot of emotions and a lot of testosterone and aggression, a lot of risk, mum becomes between carer, nurturer and also disciplinarian. And that's a massive change, isn't it? So for Decky to go through that and then sort of miss out having a permanent father figure who was there every single moment of the day or his life, it naturally missed out on those skills.
Yeah, and he's now, watched him in the last few years really trying to shape himself as a man. What is a man? What is a man? What does it look like? What does it mean? How do I do it respectfully? What male stereotypical characteristics do I align with? What don't I align with? the drinking culture. That's not really me, but it seems like all men in Australia are expected to drink, especially around things like his rugby union or university.
Yeah.
And so it's been really interesting watching him, you know, take that journey. You know, I really respect the way he's approached it, and like all of us young developing, he's made mistakes, but it's been really special to watch him take accountability and try and be independent in evolving himself.
Yeah.
Trying to work on that process. We saw that with Jess even when he came in the other night, that they're still looking for guidance. They're still looking for people to talk to about how they shape out their futures. So
I'm glad both those young men are open with that, because, you know, we always talk about the good old days or whatever. Like, you know, I think my dad was married at 21, and I don't feel like I had the similar issues when I was 22 or 25, you know, checking back with a mother or feeling like I was in doubt of so many things. But I think for some to actually, young men to be brave enough to actually reach out and say, I don't know if this is right, but I'm trying this. You know, what do you think? You know, mum or whoever they're guiding who are older, they've got obviously life experience as well. And I think that is so much more kudos from what I'm thinking compared to someone who might just live with their parents and just not know what they're doing yet and live there till they're 30 or 35.
Yeah, but even I was thinking it was interesting that we've been talking a lot about this lately, about your programming and how you're raised, or what conditions you to believe what you believe in your life, or how you should live your life. And we were talking to Jesse about this the other night, that he spoke about you know, it's natural to gain pressure around getting married. He's 25. He's very strong with his Christian faith. There's pressure or expectation naturally that he should now be looking to get married and have a family, and you know, we were just chatting to him about, well, at the end of the day, Jess, you've got to do it on your timings based on what's right for you as an individual. And that's just one example. But I think if I look back, like, you know, you can ask me about the Matthew McConaughey book. I think it's just so important to make sure that you're making your life choices for yourself. Yeah. And
it lines with your values, I think.
Yeah, and it's really, really tricky, like, to watch the programming kick in. Like, we talk about our girls at the moment are seeking the interest of boys. They're just starting to get to that age, right, where they're starting to notice boys, and their peers are looking for boys as a social status of who's being wanted or liked. Yeah. And the behaviour's changing, and we sort of look at this, and I'm really strong in my voice around stop looking for boys to find you. Just be you and be the best version of you, and know what it is that you want, and what are the terms for your life, because I think we've still got a long way to go with that, particularly with social media influence at the moment, where they can be brave enough to stand alone and not fall into the programming or the requirements of where, what do I call it, social engineering, where you're being skewed to join the massive following, where, you know, everyone's doing it on Instagram or Snapchat, so therefore I must do it. Everyone's wearing that, so I think I should wear that. So we've spoken so many times to the girls about, look back at your value set. That's number one. Does it match your values? Does it match your family values? Does going and doing those things that other girls are doing align with what you want for yourself? And if you dig deep and listen to yourself, you realise it's actually not really what you believe or support. No, but that's a challenge, isn't it? Because, you know, Atomic Habits, read that book, and they talked about how we do things based on 3 reasons. One is individual. If you're individually good at something, you'll pursue that. One is cultural. It's based on your culture. You normally do it because your culture accepts you, and that's what you want to keep that culture instilled and strong. And the third one, which is the most popular one, is a social, because we want to be part of a group, and that's how we're built, and we're born on that. So when teenagers naturally push back on their parents, because that's what their neurological state is like, they have to push back and question values and question, you know, decisions, etc. And then they've got a group of peers who they want to be accepted by, to be part of a social group, which is the norm for us, our society. And that group of peers is so strong
this book I'm reading at the moment says that if we allow those kids just to do what their peers believe as part of that group mentality, that group think mentality, and us as parents think, oh, well, they're just pushing back and that's normal, so we'll just stay out of their lives. It's one of the worst things we can do. We still have to instill, like you said, confidence, values. What do you stand for? What is okay, what's not okay? And then be with them through that guiding time.
Well, one of them was, let's just take the dress, the outfits. And the pushback was, well, everyone's wearing it. And I was like, well, I couldn't give two hoots. Who's wearing it? That doesn't align with our value set, so that's not going to be an acceptable option. And I think that's the key piece, is that just because it's socially normal,
Can't give up parenting.
you cannot give up your parenting values. And I'm probably going to upset people with this commentary, but one of those examples was I was hearing about the whole furry conversation.
And the teacher was a fairy?
More about, I think it was girls' grammar was allowing girls to leave spaces for their tails because they identified as furries, and there were kitty litters, or I don't know, but I just challenge people to stop and think for a moment about what's the long-term benefit to the individual for allowing them to believe that they can, self-identifying that way. What's the long-term? I don't know. I'm not going to word it right, but I guess we're still quite old-fashioned. There are things that we will agree to because we've given it considered thought. We've come to acceptance about certain things that are fair and reasonable, and without judgment we will accept. But then there is also things within our family dynamic and our value set that we will not allow anyone to tell us is okay, regardless of whether it's been considered a social norm now.
Yeah.
And I think that's my point, is, and maybe the tail option isn't the best example, but just because social media, the news, a movement is coming through that says this is the way it needs to be, I think you and I have said to our family, you'll need to stop, you'll need to think about that, you'll need to decide whether that aligns with your values and whether you support that, and then you'll need to decide. And that's all I would say is, if you decide it's a great idea to grow a tail or identify as a cat, well, okay, let that be your decision, that you did the research, investigation, and aligns with your values, not just because someone else told you. Yeah.
Yeah, and we know the power of minority groups. So often minority groups will go towards other minority groups, and they're still often ostracised. So it's a tough way of being too. Like, people often go there for some identity, but unfortunately, they often don't get that identity. Well, they do for a while, but then they realise they're still part of a minority group. Yeah,
and don't mistake me. I'm all for equal rights, but I'm not for being told what to believe. I will make my own decisions based on my own values and my own beliefs. And I think that's the piece that I find challenged with any minority group, is when the minority group is still curving us socially to believe that needs to be what the majority group believes. I don't tell anyone else how to live. I don't expect anyone should tell us how to live. That's really the principle, I suppose, I come from.
And for the parents out there and the guardians and the single parents, whatever the family dynamic is, if you're looking after children, I've said this before on GW Unspoken, we discuss stuff we don't typically talk about but probably should. And this is a big one. I really think that as a family, whatever your dynamic looks like, it's challenge yourselves to do this. When you have a dinner conversation and everyone's relaxed around food, usually it could be at the end of the meal, actually have that hard conversation with the kids and say, what do you think our family stands for? Try and get the values out from them, because and it's actually a harder question often than you think, but when the kids actually have buy-in about what they think that your family actually stands for and what some of their true values are, you can always go back to that when they start, pushing back, or the challenges, there's some things you don't agree with what they're doing, for example, and you can always pull it back to those values. And it's so important. I think there's over 50 values out there, but they might pinpoint 5 that are really key for them. And I think that's a really good start of where you can actually parent well and have that really close connection with them, because they'll have more of their buy-in about what their values are.
Yeah, and look, you know, I obviously went there with something quite controversial for a lot of people. But I think the message I would leave, based on all of our readings, research and specialists we subscribe to, is that young teenage brains are developing, they are adaptable, they are susceptible to influence.
They're emotional.
They are emotional, they're not fixed, they're vulnerable, they're easily influenced. All I'm saying is it is our job to guide them and continue to guide them and ask of them to be able to take time before making decisions based on what everyone else is doing. And if those decisions then play out to be still the same way they feel when they're 18, well then that's okay.
They can make that decision.
That's
then.
right. But I think we are, what's that word? We are outsourcing the boundary setting, the decision making, based on feeling like we need to be friends as opposed to parents. Way too early. We are allowing our young people to do everything that we had to wait for until we were 18, on the basis because it's the social norm, on the basis it's because we didn't want to be as restrictive as our parents. And I would just say, coming from somebody who had none of that and has had to spend a lot of their 20s developing good, healthy boundaries by making lots of mistakes, that you're doing a really good job by remaining present, engaged, cautious, and continuing to set boundaries, whether or not it's socially accepted or not.
Yeah, have that strong family value above everything else. I think too, it's hard when we're in a society that's instantaneous and instant gratification too, to try and slow teens down, to say it's okay to not get this now or not get that now, or, you know, be in the moment of those values, some of those values you're talking about. And I think that's the biggest challenge I'm finding with teenagers, is they're just expected to have everything now.
Yeah, but remember when we were kids, you'd have this as children, our families would say, well, just because someone tells you to jump off a cliff doesn't mean you'll go and do it. Same principle applies. Just because it's become the social norm doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, but is there more pressure now because people can instantaneously get on social media and bag people and ostracise people? I think there's a lot more pressure now that social media has that our teens care about, which they shouldn't, but will now because of that. It's easy to deem the online bullying compared to, you know, we could have sorted out one day in the schoolyard and that was it. You know, you wouldn't call them it.
Yeah, yes to all of that. But I also preempt what the girls are going to experience, which is naturally bullying, mean comments from boys and girls, pressure from boyfriends or girlfriends as they're older. All of that's a norm. It existed when we were young people, it exists now. But by preempting that, by having those conversations early, I find I'm always trying to just build up the self-esteem in our young people to be able to be resilient enough to handle that. Like, first day of school this year, both my girls and my nephew went to school, and people they thought were their friends were mean to them.
Yeah.
Surprised me. What I was able to do then was to navigate it around. People are emotional beings. They'll have good and bad days, move on, meet new people.
Yeah, but it wasn't rescuing. That's the difference. Like you talked about earlier, it was about you're going to go through stuff where there's some shit you cannot control, and you cannot control people. So rather than mollycoddle them and say it's okay, well maybe tomorrow they'll come back to you, and you actually gave them, like you said, the guide, but you actually instilled confidence into, hey, this is the big bad world out there. Let's build some resilience in yourself. But
also the fact that we're not perfect beings. People have bad days. Everyone has a bad mood every now and then. Like, the thing is, our young people need to know that the world isn't a pathway to happiness. It's like the flow of the ocean. good days, bad days, tired, in and out, you know, rough seas, calm blue oceans, nice days in the sunshine, days when you feel like you're drowning and need to be rescued. We have to create adaptability in our young people so they don't have this expectation that everything looks like an Instagram reel. That's the piece, is arming them to expect life to be full of good days and bad days creates a level of balance that allows things to occur and allows them to adapt to those occurrences versus these huge, you know, meltdowns when
over almost nothing.
Everything doesn't go to the Instagram reel plan.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing we're competing against now, is the idea that everyone should be billionaires and, you know,
and have it now,
and have it now, and that everyone has perfect bodies and perfect faces and perfect relationships and
we're happy all the time,
perfect jobs, and it's just so destructive. What did you say to me once? The formula for happiness
is what we have divided by what we want. So if you're happier, just be grateful for what you do have compared to comparing with others and dwelling on what you don't have. You know, that's why we talk third world countries. Third world countries, they often don't have... malnutrition is terrible. Like, their physical health is terrible on average because they're malnourished. But they don't have many mental health issues because they're not comparing.
That's it.
Latha went out there and just said, like, I think it's a part of India, and just said they all have the same uniform, the same clothes, they all do housework, they all wash their clothes. The older ones, siblings look after younger siblings. They're still expected to do jobs. And he said there's no mental health issues because they're all the same. They're not saying, oh, I wish I had those Nikes, I wish I had those 270s, or whatever it was.
Yeah, well, that's the other piece, isn't it, right? Everyone's dying a slow death if they've got to wait for something longer than 5 minutes. And even to the point of, you know, I hope you won't mind me saying this, but my son and I had a run-in because he was at a wedding and he just didn't feel like being there. And I said, it's regardless of whether you feel like being there. This day isn't about you today. This day is about celebrating such and such's wedding. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be enjoying yourself. You don't have to, you know, feel like 100%. But you do need to tolerate this.
And show up for someone else.
Because it's for your family. You need to show up for someone else. You need to serve them today and make it about them.
Be present, yeah.
And I think that's an example of where perhaps I got the phone call to allow them the leave pass, and I didn't give them the answer they wanted.
You talk about the line. And but it's still a guiding principle, right? You still talk about the line, but said the life lesson was about that other person at that time.
And
you're uncomfortable.
Yeah, and lastly I would say is that, you know, there's so much depression and there's so much anxiety, but what we know is the magic bullet that people are looking for around that will always make an enormous difference is service to others.
Yeah.
I tell, you know, the girls this all the time, and Debbie, you know, you are spending way too much time focused on yourself, thinking about yourself, thinking about the thinking. Just go out and do something for someone else less fortunate than yourself, and
watch someone else be happy.
Yeah, well, even if you can't be happy, the day's still being productive, right?
Yeah.
You've given something to someone else.
But it's productivity, it's purpose still for somebody else, and that does give you a feel good in return, that nice endorphins in return. Well, we're nearly home.
That was a long rant, wasn't it?
Thank you for a great trip.
Got on my soapbox a bit there, but
that was good. I just appreciate and I'm really grateful for our conversations we have. People probably listening going, man, you guys talk about a lot of deep stuff. You actually have fun, but I think it's actually enjoyable for us. We're both, you know, often on the same page about parenting and also life, and I think it's really important that people are open into discussions with their spouse or their significant other, or even their kids, if there's no significant other at the moment.
Well, you talk about legacy, right? For both of us, raising young people that serve the world, that give back, that have a strong value set, that contribute, not take from the world, is something we both really feel strong.
And we get it wrong, but we like to read, we like to listen to others, like, you know, people in the experts in the space too, and challenge what their thoughts are, but try different things too to try and get our kids I guess be good role models for our kids too, because I think that's another one of the things we want to be as good parents.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, darling. Join me on GW Unspoken. We'll have you on again, and look forward to everyone's company next time.